The Reader is quite simply a masterpiece. It is a profound, deeply affecting drama that tackles the issue of shame, both personal and cultural, and valiantly constructs a narrative of moral complexity using the backdrop of the Holocaust. Based on the novel by Bernhard Schlink, which I read a few years ago during my Holocaust Studies unit at university, The Reader is about Michael Berg, a 15-year-old boy who begins a passionate affair with Hannah Schmitz, an older woman. Hannah eventually leaves without telling Michael, and the memories of this intensely erotic relationship would linger with him for years until they are painfully brought back to the surface one day. Michael, now a law student in Berlin, observes a trial where Hannah, his former lover, is being tried as a concentration camp guard and war criminal responsible, indirectly, for the deaths of over 300 people. Michael knows a secret about Hannah that may help her case, but he wonders if he could or should reveal it. I've mentioned before that my favorite type of film is the character study, and The Reader is a very effective look into the remorseful lives of both Hannah and Michael. But my other favorite type of film is more intangible in nature. I like a film to feel long, but not in terms of its pacing. A film with dull, boring pacing can be terrible, but rather in terms of the depth and volume of human experience within it. Perhaps a better word would be full. For me, the best dramas immerse you so completely that you feel like you've been watching them for years, and they connect with you on such an emotional level that you feel as if you are living inside the film instead of merely watching it. The antithesis of such a sensation would be something like Inland Empire, which is boring and almost repels engagement. I feel the same way about video games. Most games have you work through an interesting story or adventure, which is perfectly fine, but Myst, when I was little, Fallout 3, especially New Vegas, and maybe KOTOR are the only games that I could truly get lost in and genuinely feel like I'm living in their worlds. The three films from this year that gave me this feeling were The Hunt, Blankenieves, and About Time. And films that gave me this feeling in the past include 2001, Avalon, Children of Men, There Will Be Blood, The Seventh Seal, and Chinatown. The Reader now joins them. The Reader is a poignant, mesmerizing film. The first act, which shows Hannah and Michael's relationship, is quite intriguing, as they clearly love each other, yet young Michael is naive, and Hannah is stern and short-tempered. And Hannah's strict motherly demeanor amid many intimate scenes of sex is somewhat unnerving at first. The fact of Michael being underage is inescapable, but like in Lolita, there is clear love between them, and their bonding activity of Michael reading literature to her, thus sharing the joy of the written word, serves to diminish the creepiness and foreshadow a pressing conflict later in the film. The Reader, which takes place in 1958 at the start, rarely acknowledges World War II in the first act, and the only symbolic reference to it is the swastikas in Michael's stamp collection, but the filmmaker's depiction of Michael's more or less happy, peaceful teenage years, with no reflection on the evil in Germany's recent past, may engage with the film's major theme of shame, and with it, denial. The film purposefully excludes the horrors of war in the opening so that they are more shocking when pulled back into view by the trial Michael observes. Moreover, World War II and the Holocaust are still such prominent and horrifically significant events, and are still within living memory, and something that society will and should never forget, meaning that the film doesn't need to show the war, only its legacy, for it to still carry heavy dramatic weight. The film becomes even more compelling in the second act. As mentioned before, The Reader is a film and book about shame, almost a thesis on the subject, distilling and internalizing the cultural shame about how such evil flourished in the war down to the level of a troubled relationship between two people. Michael's shame is for having loved a woman complicit in such suffering and brutality, but he is also ashamed of not stepping up to help her. These different sources of shame clash with each other and gnaw at him for his entire life, which contributed to his failed marriage and distant daughter, and Michael can't bring himself to visit Hannah because of either shame until she is just about to be released, and cannot be ignored any longer. Hannah's story is heartbreaking, as during the trial she decides that honesty is the best tactic, as she too is ashamed of what happened in Auschwitz. But it proves to be the most damning, and it is awful to see her fellow guards on trial turning on her and implicating her alone in the deaths inside the church. She is also ashamed of her big secret, namely that she can't read, and though it could help her case, she is too proud to admit to it. This enduring shame is conveyed remarkably by Kate Winslet as Hannah, David Cross as the young Michael, and Ray Fiennes as the older Michael, and their performances are subtle and often wordlessly convey their fascinating emotional states. I love how Hannah, young Michael, and old Michael, for it is useful to regard them as different characters, are portrayed as sympathetic but still flawed and not completely sympathetic, thus hinting at the good and dark in everything, even the war. The courtroom sequence is the most riveting and engaging one I've seen since Paths of Glory, and will stay in your mind for a long time. I'd also like to point out the irony of casting Bruno Ganz and Alexandra Maria Lara, who played Adolf Hitler and Hitler's secretary Traudi Jung, respectively, in the magnificent film Downfall, both as Holocaust survivors in this film. The music is beautiful, the cinematography is sumptuous, the shifting of time periods is handled smoothly, and the film is also a very effective adaptation of Schlink's novel. The film condenses and streamlines many plot points, as most book-to-film adaptations must do, but it keeps the general plot and robust emotion intact, and I like the stylistic framework of Hannah and Michael's past being told through flashbacks until Michael is forced to reunite with Hannah, thus allowing the present to literally and narratively catch up with him. Though it doesn't really add anything, I also like the slightly stronger focus on Michael's family and daughter. There is just one small plot hole that should be addressed. Hannah is sentenced to life imprisonment after being convicted of the murder of all the prisoners in the church, and she takes the blame for writing the report on the events to avoid giving a sample of her handwriting, as her inability to do so would expose her illiteracy. But during her prison term, Hannah slowly teaches herself to read using books in the prison library and audio tapes sent to her containing novels narrated by Michael. She appears to make no secret of teaching herself to read, which begs this question: if Hannah's illiteracy was known to the prison officials, then there's no reason that her case can't be revised with the inference that she couldn't have written the report. Otherwise, The Reader is a remarkable film and a strong literary adaptation that I give a full 5 stars out of 5. Thanks for watching. Cheers.